I've lived with a secret for 12 years. A secret that started as a mistake, grew into a lie, and followed me into every room of my marriage like a shadow I couldn't shake. My name is Jessica. I'm 36 now. I've been married to Ethan for over a decade. On paper, we're solid. 2 kids, a mortgage, joint Costco membership, the works. We laugh at the same dumb shows, finish each other's coffee orders, and argue about whose turn it is to vacuum. We're good. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know that 2 weeks before our wedding, I slept with someone else. Not because I was confused about my feelings for him. Not because I had doubts. And definitely not because I was trying to sabotage what we were building. I wasn't. I was stupid, scared, reckless, and too damn proud to admit it to anyone, including myself. It happened at a bachelorette party, the kind that starts innocent and ends with blurry memories and bad decisions. My friends had rented out a cabin in the mountains, one last hurrah before I became a wife. There were drinks. Too many drinks. Someone invited their boyfriend's friends. And that's where I saw Ryan. Ryan was the classic, the one that got away from my early 20s. We had history. Unfinished, unresolved, unwise history. The kind of connection you romanticize when you're about to commit to someone forever. We talked. We drank. We caught up on nothing important. And then I kissed him. I don't remember deciding to. I just remember the weight of his hand on my waist, the taste of regret before it even happened. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even good. It was an escape. A selfish, cowardly escape from the reality that I was about to belong to someone else forever. The next morning, I showered until my skin turned red, stared at myself in the mirror, and promised I'd never speak of it. To anyone. Least of all Ethan. Because telling him would do nothing but destroy a man who had only ever loved me with his whole heart. A man who showed up when he said he would. Who held me together through panic attacks and deadlines and family holidays I didn't want to attend. A man who deserved honesty, but not that kind. So I put on my ring, smiled through our wedding photos, kissed him in front of everyone we knew, and carried that secret straight into our marriage. Our wedding was beautiful. Everyone said so. The flowers were peonies, my favorite, even though they were out of season and overpriced. The music was soft, tasteful. The food was warm, the wine flowed, and the sunset timed itself perfectly as if it had RSVP'd too. People cried. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Ethan looked like a man who couldn't believe his luck, standing there in a navy suit that brought out the color of his eyes. He smiled at me like I was the only person who existed. Like he couldn't wait to start forever with me. And I smiled back. I said the vows. I kissed the man I loved. I danced. I laughed. I held babies and posed for photos and thanked relatives I barely remembered for flying in. I played the part. But inside, I was a mess of contradictions. The entire day, I felt like I was floating slightly above my body, watching a version of myself perform. Like I was watching a film I couldn't pause, one where the lead character is seconds away from being found out. I looked at Ethan and wondered, what if he knew? Would he still be holding my hand this tightly? Would he still look at me like I was his whole future? I kissed him at the altar with someone else's hands still on my skin. I led him toast to our honesty and our unshakable foundation, knowing full well that I had already cracked it before we even moved in together. And yet, I didn't stop anything. There were moments, tiny ones, where I almost said something. In the bridal suite, as I was getting my makeup done, the artist joked, "Still time to run." Everyone laughed. I almost cried. During the first dance, as Ethan whispered lyrics into my ear, I wanted to whisper back, "You deserve better." But I didn't, because I was too scared of losing him, too ashamed to confess, too selfish to give up the future we'd built. So I told myself it was a mistake. One night, one moment, something I could bury and forget, like a bad tattoo under a layer of long sleeves. I convinced myself that people made worse mistakes all the time, that this didn't define me, that it didn't matter in the grand scheme of our life together. If I never did it again, if I loved him truly, deeply, completely, maybe it could just fade. But it didn't fade. Because shame doesn't die in silence. It festers. It mutates. It finds its way into every conversation, every compliment, every kind gesture you don't think you deserve. And that day, in the glow of fairy lights and champagne, surrounded by people who believed we were the real deal, I made a second mistake. I didn't just lie to Ethan. I lied to myself. I told myself I could build a marriage on top of something broken. As long as I never looked down. If you were to scroll through my social media, you'd probably think I had it all. Holiday photos in matching pajamas, brunch selfies with Ethan and the kids, vacation shots from Maine, Tahoe, Mexico, captions like, "My whole heart in one frame. So lucky to call this man mine." And I wasn't lying, not really. I do love my husband. I am proud of our life. But behind every post, every anniversary caption, there's a secret I've never spoken aloud. For 12 years, I carried it like a second skin. At first, it felt manageable. I threw myself into newlywed life, learning how he took his coffee, memorizing his shirt sizes, organizing our bathroom drawer so we each had our side. We adopted a dog. We painted our bedroom a shade of gray we both hated 6 months later. We laughed a lot. God, we laughed so much in those early years. He made me feel safe, wanted, like I'd finally arrived in the version of adulthood I used to dream about as a kid. But underneath the laughter was a low hum. A small, persistent voice that would whisper during quiet moments. "He doesn't really know you." Every time Ethan said, "We've always been honest with each other," something in my chest tightened. Every time he praised me as the most loyal, grounded woman he knew, I felt my throat close. I told myself it was penance, that the discomfort was my punishment, that I'd earned the right to keep the secret because I'd stayed faithful since. Because I loved him every day. Because I never spoke to Ryan again. Never even looked at him. That had to count for something, right? But guilt isn't linear. It doesn't stay politely in its corner. It grows. It started seeping into our arguments. Whenever Ethan would raise his voice or walk out mid-discussion, my first instinct was, "You have no right to be mad at him. You're the broken one." It shaped how I handled intimacy. There were nights he reached for me and I'd freeze. Not because I didn't want him, but because I didn't feel worthy of being wanted. And it bled into parenting too. When our daughter asked me at age 6, "Mommy, do you always tell Daddy the truth?" I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. Because the truth was, I hadn't told him everything. And the version of me he loved, this faithful, devoted, principled wife, wasn't quite real. She was someone I performed. A curated character I built day by day. I remember once, maybe 5 years into the marriage, we ran into Ryan at a grocery store. I felt it before I saw him, a shift in the air, a tightening in my ribs. He didn't say anything, just nodded at me with faint recognition. Ethan turned and asked, "Friend of yours?" I lied. "No, just a face that looked familiar." We kept walking. Ryan disappeared, but for the rest of that night I was cold, quiet, wrapped in a dread that I couldn't name, because for a split second, my two worlds almost collided, and that terrified me. So I doubled down. I became a better wife, threw birthday parties with handmade decorations, learned to cook his mother's lasagna recipe from scratch, never let a kiss go unsaid or a text unanswered. I told myself I was earning redemption, one casserole, one school recital at a time. But deep down, I knew I wasn't fixing anything. I was just delaying the fallout. It was a Tuesday, a totally average Tuesday, the kind where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen, just leftovers for dinner, homework sprawled across the kitchen table, Ethan grumbling about traffic while the kids bicker over who used the last of the peanut butter. We were cleaning up after dinner when our daughter, Maddie, 10 years old, too smart for her own good, looked up from the counter and asked, "Did you and Dad ever lie to each other?" It was innocent. Curious. Probably inspired by a school discussion about honesty or a cartoon she watched. She didn't even look up from her math workbook. But I froze. Ethan chuckled, wiping a plate dry. "Sure we have," he said. "Tiny stuff, like me pretending to like her kale chips, or your mom saying she doesn't mind folding laundry." Maddie giggled. "No, like, real lies." I swallowed, hard. Ethan raised an eyebrow, amused. "Not that I know of," he said, smiling at me. "Right, Jess?" I forced a laugh. Right. My throat burned. That night, after the kids went to bed, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror brushing my teeth, staring at myself like I didn't know who I was anymore. 12 years. 12 years of bedtime kisses and holiday traditions and slow dances in the living room. 12 years of secrets, of pretending that the weight I carried was manageable. But something about Maddie's question, so simple, so direct, rattled me in a way I couldn't ignore. It made me realize I had normalized the lie. I had folded it into my identity. I had convinced myself that silence was protection. Protection for Ethan, for the kids, for the life we built. But what if it was cowardice? What if every moment of love Ethan had given me was built on a foundation that could crumble the second he knew the truth? What if I'd stolen his right to choose? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, and felt like an intruder in my own life. At 3:13 a.m., I got out of bed. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and began to write. It wasn't a dramatic confession. No metaphors. No excuses. Just facts. I made a terrible mistake before our wedding. I was drunk. I kissed someone I had a history with. I didn't stop it. I never told you because I was ashamed and scared and didn't want to lose you. I never did it again, but I also never stopped hating myself for it. And you deserve to know who you've really been married to. I understand if this changes everything. I'm sorry. I read it 5 times, deleted half, rewrote it again. It took me until sunrise. I printed it, folded it neatly, and placed it on the kitchen counter beneath his coffee mug. Then I packed a small bag, wrote a sticky note that said, "I'm at my sister's," and left before anyone woke up. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if he'd call or yell or never speak to me again. I just knew I couldn't keep lying. Because the truth doesn't just live in your head. It lives in your body. It creeps into your sleep, your smile, your silences. And I was tired of carrying it alone. Ethan didn't call right away. I sat on my sister's couch all morning, phone in hand, watching the screen like it might burn a hole in my palm. Every second of silence was a punishment I knew I deserved. At 12:04 p.m., my phone finally lit up. Ethan. I didn't answer on the first ring, or the second. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. By the third, I forced myself to press accept. His voice was quiet, measured. Come home. No yelling, no crying, just 2 words. I didn't know what that meant. Forgiveness? Fury? A need for clarity before he burned everything down? I drove back in silence, heart hammering with every mile. When I walked into the house, he was sitting at the kitchen table. The letter was in front of him, his coffee untouched. He looked up at me. His face was pale, not angry, just stripped bare. Sit, he said. I did. For a while he didn't say anything. Neither did I. Finally he asked, "Was it Ryan?" I nodded. He closed his eyes. I thought so. That surprised me. You knew? No. I suspected. You acted strange at the wedding, and then when we ran into him a few years later, you went cold. He opened his eyes again, and this time they were full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Pain. You kissed him. Or more? I swallowed hard. More. He flinched, like the word hit him physically. But he didn't shout, didn't leave. I wasn't in love with him, I said quickly. It wasn't about wanting someone else. It was about fear, about being terrified I didn't deserve you. He laughed bitterly. And so you proved it? I couldn't answer that. I thought we were solid, he whispered. I built my whole life on that belief. You were the one person I trusted completely. Tears welled in my eyes. You can still trust me. That's why I told you. No, he said. You told me because it was eating you alive, because you needed to feel clean. Don't pretend this was for me. He wasn't wrong. But it wasn't the whole truth either. I needed you to know because I couldn't keep living like that, I said. But I also needed to give you the choice. To decide if you still want this. Want me, fully. Not just the version of me I let you see. He stared at me for a long time. I don't know, he finally said. Silence. I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again, he added. And that kills me. Because I love you. I love our life. But now every memory has a crack in it. Every moment we built together feels contaminated. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I didn't have the right words. You said it never happened again, he said. It didn't, I replied. He nodded slowly. I believe you, but that doesn't make it easier. He stood up, walked to the window, and stood there with his back to me. You didn't just lie, Jess. You took away my right to choose, to marry you knowing, to weigh it for myself. That's what hurts the most. My voice cracked. I know. I'm sorry. He turned back to me. His face was unreadable. I don't want a divorce, he said. Not yet, not today, but I need space, and therapy, and time. Whatever you need, I whispered. Good, he said. Because for the first time in 12 years, this marriage has to stop being yours to control. The words stung, but they were true, and I had no defense left to offer. He walked past me without touching me, went upstairs, closed the door, and I sat there, on the same chair where I'd first placed the letter, staring at the exact spot where the truth had detonated. It didn't feel like relief. It didn't feel like release. It felt like ruin. But maybe that was the first step. It's been 7 months since I told Ethan the truth. 7 months of counseling sessions and late-night conversations that feel more like surgery than healing. 7 months of navigating our marriage like it's a fragile heirloom someone dropped but refuses to throw away. We still live in the same house. We still share breakfast with the kids. From the outside, we look the same. But we're not. There's a pause now before he says, "I love you." There's a layer of caution in his touch, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes when I walk into a room. He's trying. I'm trying. But some days, it feels like trying to hold water in cupped hands. No matter how tight we hold, some of it slips through. He asked for space, so I moved into the guest room. Not as punishment, just respect. The first time I've ever really honored what he needs instead of protecting what I want to keep. And in that small, separate room, I've started to look at myself differently. I used to think telling him was the brave part. Now I know. Living with what that truth changed is far harder. Because no matter how honest I am now, I can't undo what I took from him. The illusion of purity. The clean slate we were supposed to have. The belief that he married someone without a shadow. But here's the thing. For the first time in 12 years, I'm not pretending. I'm not smiling through guilt. I'm not performing. I'm not building a life on a foundation I know is cracked. Everything that's left between us now is real. Raw. Sometimes ugly, but real. We go to therapy once a week. Sometimes we talk about the night I cheated. Sometimes we talk about the wedding. Sometimes we talk about nothing at all. Just sit there, breathing the same air, waiting for the next layer of trust to rebuild itself. I don't know if we'll make it. I hope we do. But I've stopped clinging to that hope like it's oxygen, because I'm learning something I should have understood years ago. Love, built on a lie, will always feel like drowning. Even if the other person never knows, you will. You'll carry it into every hug, every joke, every bedtime story. You'll wonder if the love you're being given is meant for you, or just for the version of you that never confessed. So yes, I told him the truth because I couldn't carry it anymore. But more than that, I told him because he deserved to decide if the real me was still someone he wanted to build a life with. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But now at least, it's his choice, and that's something I can finally live with.